I figured I would read this because of the recent controversies around Lauren Southern and the TradThots. Now, I'm not sure if it's thoughts or tots. I'm noticing most of you say the latter, tots. But it's just, yeah. I'm not as hip. I thought I would read from what started all this damn trouble. Briffault's Law. Most important, ladies, if you are a traditional woman, really, I cannot stress this enough. If you are a woman interested in traditionalism, especially if you're on kind of like you basically are you're white, you want a white dude, and you're just not interested in anything else. I can't recommend this book enough. One, I don't know why, but for some reason, when I looked for this on Amazon, there are not that many copies around. This is an old copy. What is it? This is a printing from, I think like the 60s. Now, I keep forgetting. No. This is a 59 version. So first published 27, then 52, and this is the abridged 59 version. I didn't find anything other than the 59 hardback book. Now, he has other books that are in use in actual psychology classes, and this one person who she was relatively conservative, she's like, I don't understand at all why this book is being used in a psychology class. But but this can't recommend enough. And I'm going to just read some select pieces from it. And there's one I'm hoping I'll just fall upon, but it's one of the most important lines ever. But I first figure I should map out what this guy's like. So let's just go to from The Herd in the Family Amongst Animals, page 49. The female in the animal group. Though it is the male which keeps the females in a polygamous herd together, his control is purely in sexual matters. An animal group is not usually led by a patriarch, an old male, but by a female who guides it and keeps watch against possible dangers. Whereas stags will often walk blindly into danger, the females seem more alert. The same is true of buffaloes, of African antelopes, of gazelles, chamois, I believe that's chamois, zebras, and so on. Sometimes, says Dr. Hornaday, a herd of elk is completely tyrannized by an old doe who makes the young bucks fly from her in terror when one prod of her sharp antlers would quickly send her to the rear. When a male and female tiger are found in company, the tigress is generally in advance of the male, and the same is true of the lioness. The migrations of mammals are led by the females and appear to be determined mainly by the female's search for favorable grounds to bring up their offspring. In short, even in the typically polygamous herd, the dominance of the male is qualified and the protective social functions and discharged chiefly by the female. It is in the field of sexual relations, in the narrowest sense, that the herd is dominated by the male, and then only during the period of rut. Thus, the real animal group depends on the bond between the mother and offspring, not upon the association between the sexes. Indeed, the male sexual instincts tend to break up the herd. In the typical herbivorous species, for instance, the red deer, the female withdraws from the herd after impregnation and leads a solitary life with her calf until autumn. If the hind then joins a herd, her male offspring is driven off by the stag and is thus weaned, although a female calf is allowed to remain. In short, there is opposition between the maternal and the sexual instinct. The tendency of the female is to segregate herself with her offspring, And the more prolonged the maturity of the offspring, the more complete will that segregation be. Note, single mothers with like a 10 or older child, and how they just don't, they have sort of every possibility of re-entering the sexual market, but also they can't. It's too late. Nobody wants to deal with that anymore. When a child is very young, you might find somebody who's interested, but once after a certain age, just certain things start to happen. The lines like this made me think more about the way humans behave. That there's much deeper stuff going on, and that's why I think honestly a lot of single moms drive men off. They just suddenly are like, I'm going to say something crazy and bitchy and drive them away, because that's really what she's trying to do. She's reproduced. She has no reason to go through that again. So it's just no. You're not stuffing money in me. You're not stuffing food and luxuries into my nest here. So fuck you. Just something I've noticed. Thus we have the paradox, as it seems to us, that those animals termed gregarious are devoid of any binding social sentiment, and it is among the supposedly non-gregarious creatures that the germs of the social instinct have developed. It is in the maternal, not the sexual association, that the growth of the so-called social instinct takes place. The mother is the center and bond of the animal family. When the male attaches himself to it, his association with it is loose and precarious, and in no animal species does it appear to survive the exercise of the sexual function. Nor is any tendency toward a closer association of the male with the family discernible as we ascend the scale of evolution. This is actually another reason why that you'll notice the Christian New Right is becoming more and more opposed to a lot of the alt-right and white nationalists. And a lot of the alt-right and white nationalists kind of still have an issue with Christianity. And this is the kind of a problem here. Okay, one of the things that is a big deal about the people of the northernmost regions of Europe is that they're odd about the single coupling and really like that they focused on single coupling and long-term kind of a romantic family clan bond relationship that was extremely successful, and sending a son out to raid other camps, and that then he could start his clan and lead the clan, and that this was a leadership by a male, that it was patriarchal in origin. And this is one of the things. Remember how odd the Hebrew religion is to a lot of people in the ancient world. That they had all these tendencies that were particular to them and odd. Like they didn't just kill off their kids that weren't going to that were going to be a burden. Where the Greeks did that. The Greeks would leave babies at the crossroads for the wolves if the child was going to be a burden, and dependent upon city state. Not all, let's say. To the point where one of my friends just made me realize that he's like, no, there's, okay, I want to say not the Etruscans. It's not hitting me. A very specific, I want to say the Etruscans, but I know that's not right. That he was telling me that he's like, no, you got to read about these people, this ancient Greek group, because of how unique their male-female relationships were compared to everyone around them. Everyone around them was shocked. Like the Spartans were utterly shocked. The Athenians utterly shocked. These people were so openly affectionate between men and women, and that the people would be couples, and it was they walked side by side and were affectionate to one another. So I think that this is very important that people understand where when Christianity insisted on being kind to women, and especially like really, really, really like put her forward, is that while he has charge of the family in almost all ways, that this idea of putting her forward, that it wasn't, that she is not basically a form of slave in a sense, and specifically out of Christianity, that is specific in the first letters, that you should treat the way you treat wives, and this is really something that this is a big part of. This merged with European norms, especially the northernmost people. Rather, this gelled very well with them because they're like, yeah, we treat our women actually, women are valuable to us, and you can't disrespect our women. That was a very Germanic tribe thing. That's why there's so many queens in the Germanic tribes. They had these, and they were powerful. They had superpowers supposedly, and supernatural powers. And while that had vanished in the Mediterranean world, the era of queens had long vanished. While the Germans and the Gaulish people still, they had queens, and was it the Germanics and Normans? I mean, those types of people still had these. I mean, to this, the Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria, these, and that they all were rumored to, they kind of are famous. They're famous. Tsarina Catherine. No, all these are, this is powerful women are a big deal in Christendom and the European world, and Christendom really made it such that society could deal with it, and that on top of it, men, it was really like she was like the mother of God on earth. The way that typically queens and stuff are pictured, especially once Christendom, they Christianized that European tribe, and it becomes a nation state, or a emaciated people, like Germans, like the Flemish, say, that Franks, things like that, that like the Templars, they're an order dedicated to Our Lady, the Mother of God. And I mean, seriously, it's that's a major part of the very beginning of when you go through the Templar rule and rights, and the real old thing from the French rule. So this is just something I'm putting out there, that it's like, so while you see parts of the world where they just are cruel to women, and he gets into almost everywhere, a woman who's from a neighboring tribe, you just destroy her. Everybody just rapes her to death. When she strayed too far from the other village. Swear, Sarah, I'll see if I can stumble on it. It is usual to apply the term family to animal groups, but there is, in fact, no analogy between the animal family and the patriarchal human family. The former is entirely the product of the female's instincts, and she, not the male, is the head. The male may be more powerful, though this is not invariably so. But in any case, this has nothing to do with his relation to the female. Nowhere do we know of the male using compulsion towards the female, nor is the position of the male in the animal group affected by mental superiority. For in animals, whatever may be the case with humans, it is clear that the female is superior. Masculine intellectual superiority, if we assume it, is the product of advanced social evolution, and has no application in primitive conditions. The female animal is the more cautious, ingenious, and sagacious. The male is reckless and often stupid. With most animals, males are much more often caught or shot than females. It has been said that monkeys, however, are led by old males. If this is true, it may be due to the females being burdened with their young, which they carry in their arms. In a troop of chimpanzees observed in the reserve in Tenerife, the group was led by a male, but the rear guard was brought up by an old female to whom the group ran in time of danger, and who seemed to carry the group with her when she changed her place. The female, not the male, determines the condition of the animal family, and when she can derive no benefit from association with the male, no association takes place. Mothers-R.Briffault's law. It is the female which does the house hunting, which in the case of beavers builds the dams or makes the burrows. It is the female bird which builds the nest. While the female instinct produces the family, the masculine instinct produces the herd. For the masculine instinct compels the male to impregnate as many females as possible. The stability of the herd is, therefore, limited by the operation of the sexual instinct. It is not an assemblage differing merely in size from the family, but is opposite in kind, and when true herd association takes place, means the dissolution of the maternal group or family. Thus, the herd results from atrophy of the maternal instinct. As Mr. Pycraft observed of animals, this polygamy arises not because the male captures the females, but because the females seek the males in their desire to satisfy their natural craving. This extinguishes any feelings of jealousy. From these facts, it can be understood that the masculine herd is patrilocal. That is, the female follows the male's place of residence, whereas the animal family is matrilocal. That is, the male goes to the female's lair. Wherever circumstances bring together a large number of animals, there is a tendency for the family to lapse into the herd. Rodents, such as rats or rabbits, which gather in large numbers, become promiscuous. It is, on the other hand, well nigh impossible for the herd to become transformed into a group of families, except by breaking up completely. Let's see, from the primitive human group. At the same time, it is impossible to suppose that nascent human society consisted of small, isolated groups corresponding in size to what we understand by families. Such limited groups could offer no scope for the development of those distinctly human social relations and feelings which are essential for the mental evolution which took place. Some races on the lowest level of culture are, it is true, found in small scattered groups, which include sexual societies, may be called families. For instance, the savages of Tierra del Fuego, the Eskimo, and some of the most wretched tribes in the forests of the upper Amazon and Parana. The forest Vedas of Ceylon are also found in small groups, consisting for the most part of sexual partners or single families. Such populations are not simply primitive in the sense of having remained wretchedly backwards. They are also unsuccessful races, which have been driven towards the least habitable parts of the earth. The Fuegians, who belong to the same stock as the other races of South America, have been pushed off the edge of the world and forced to break up into small clan or family groups. The forest tribes of Brazil have been driven to their present habitat by Caribbean invaders. In these unfavorable conditions, it is safe to assume that they never could have emerged from their savage state. Likewise, there are clear traces among the Eskimo of a former organization into clans, now fallen, owing to physical circumstances, into almost complete decay. The Vedas of Ceylon are the descendants of the aboriginal royal race who were driven into the jungle by invaders. In short, such societies represent not the primitive condition of human society, but the effects of its dissolution under the pressure of unfavorable conditions. We cannot infer from them the condition of incipient humanity. They are defeated, unsuccessful races. The animal race which developed into humanity must have been a favored race living in exceptionally propitious conditions. All that is involved in human evolution postulates a much larger group than the family, and in fact, we find all human communities, above the most miserable and degenerate, in much larger groups, and the larger those groups, the greater, as a rule, is their cultural and social development. How came those larger groups to be formed? The question may surprise the reader. The formation of a larger group from the original family group appears to be a quite obvious process. It might take place in two ways. Either a number of neighboring families might come together, or the mature offspring of the original family, instead of separating from their parents, might remain with them and found secondary families. Such a simple view of the origin of human society has been taken for granted from ancient times until the present. However, it begs the question, for it assumes that such family groups will continue distinct within the larger group and will retain their character and constitution. That is to say, it is postulated that those characters are already consolidated in such a manner that they will be preserved unaltered, notwithstanding the conditions presented by a different type of association. There is nothing to justify such an assumption. On the contrary, it follows from all that we know of animal groupings that the association of a number of separate families must put an end to a form of organization which demands isolation as the first condition of existence. Whenever, among animals, such an assemblage of a large number of families takes place, even temporarily, the family grouping tends to be broken up, and the constitution of this larger group lapses into that of the promiscuous herd. This takes place even among the most typically pairing and family-forming animals, vis-a-vis among birds. It does so in the short period in which they gather in large numbers during the breeding season. The larger grouping no longer depends on the manifestation of maternal instincts, but on the male instincts. From a maternal group, it is changed into a masculine group, from a family into a herd. I'm thinking a whole lot of you will be interested in reading that section. That's in the chapter, The Primitive Human Group. Let's Medicine and Surgery, from the chapter Division of Labor. The search of women for edible vegetables acquainted them with the properties of herbs and made them the first doctors. The word medicine and the name Medea, the medical herbalist witch, come from the same root, a root meaning knowledge or wisdom. Primitive medicine is, of course, for the most part a department of magic, and women, as we shall see, were the primitive practitioners of this art. In addition, in many areas the women are the surgeons and treat all injuries received in warfare. Thus, throughout the primitive populations of Indonesia, the treatment of the sick is almost exclusively in the hands of medicine women. Among the land Dayaks, while there are both male and female doctors, the service of women is regarded as more valuable and is more highly remunerated. Among many North American tribes, as also among the Eskimos, the profession is practiced solely by the old women. The same is true Patagonia, Chile, Mexico, and elsewhere. In early Arabia, down to the Middle Ages, the treatment of wounds and the practice of medicine were recognized occupations of women, and even at the present day this tradition survives in more secluded Muslim countries. Among ancient Germans, Scandinavians, and the inhabitants of Gaul, women were regarded as especially qualified in medicine. In short, to a far greater extent than is generally realized, the sexual differences between men and women are products of social development. Primitive woman is anything but effeminate, and is as capable as the man of providing for herself if she is not indeed his superior. It is commonly supposed that the facts of primitive matriarchy favor the doctrine of feminism, that is, the view that women are fitted for all the pursuits which in our society are regarded as masculine. This view, whether correct or not, does not follow from the respective capacities of men and women in primitive society. The predominance of women in primitive society, which appears to some so paradoxical, would be largely restored in our own society if culture were limited to the range of activities of the primitive household. In the spheres which are important at this cultural level, intellectual advantage is with the female. She is more wary and ingenious than the male, and it is little wonder that the savage habitually goes to his womenfolk for advice. In many societies, it has been remarked that the women are mentally higher than the men, and they are far more self-possessed. For instance, according to Mr. Landor, the Tibetan woman is far superior to the Tibetan man. She possesses a better heart, more pluck, and a finer character than he does. Time after time, when the male, timid beyond description, ran away at our approach, the women remained in charge of the tents, and although by no means cool and collected, they very rarely failed to meet us without a show of dignity. The same thing may be observed in the ruder strata of Western society. The French peasant woman, for instance, is a more intelligent, alert, and less awkward person than her man. This is a good one. The position of chiefs. It has sometimes been thought that the fact that in matriarchal societies the headman or chief is commonly a man is an argument against the view that primitive society was essentially matriarchal. This is due to a misunderstanding. The position of the headman in primitive societies entailed nothing of authority, for there is no such authority in truly primitive societies. Those whom the whites call headman are usually little more than spokesmen, put forward to voice the views of the group and without any power to act on their own initiative. In northern Melanesia, the transacting of any business with the natives is rendered very difficult by the fact that they have no chiefs, while in New Caledonia, the chiefs have absolutely no political power. Among the tribes of Assam, each village is a small republic and each man as good as his neighbor. Indeed, it would be hard to find anywhere else more thoroughly democratic communities. Headmen do exist, but their authority is very small. Such tribes have often found the necessity of appointing a leader for hunting or war. Thus, a missionary reports to the Indians of Brazil that they know neither princes nor kings. Each family regards itself as absolutely free. Every Indian looks upon himself as independent. As the continual wars which they have to wage against their neighbors place that liberty in danger, they have learnt the necessity of forming a sort of society, and they choose a chief who is called, I want to say that's Shashike, but I'm not sure. It's Cacique, and I don't do the Portuguese thing very well. But in choosing him, their intention is not to give themselves a master, but a protector and father under whose guidance they desire to place themselves. Similarly, among the Iroquois, the chiefs are nothing more than the most respected among their equals in rank. Their principal duty is to conduct negotiations, and if they make a mistake, they are reprimanded or dismissed. Among the Arabs, the chief is merely influential and is obliged at every turn to consult the tribal council. Even in Africa, the land of despots, the chiefs are not always what the European assumes. Often they are no more than war leaders. Thus, Dundas states of a number of tribes of East Africa, after the most careful inquiry, I feel convinced that these tribes have no heads or leaders who could be dignified with the names of chiefs. Thus, the existence of male chiefs in primitive social groups, far from constituting a difficulty as regards their matriarchal nature, appears on the contrary to prove the impossibility that such groups could ever have been formed in the first instance around the authority of a dominant male. Such domination is incompatible with the equalitarian character of primitive societies. I guess that's what that word was back then. The desire to dominate takes different forms in men and women. Oh, I found it! Women's ambition is not to exercise physical compulsion, but to bend the will of others to her desire, to overcome not physical, but psychical resistances. Her object is to have her way. The man, however, delights in the display of power, is flattered by hostile envy, and desires his power to be felt and known. Thus, it is that, where tribes have conquered other people, the war leader has acquired absolute authority over them. Boom! let's just end it at that. I finally found this line. Been looking for it for months. That's why I love you guys. Peace.